This program is dedicated to those that paid for their lives at the hands of the state. From the West Michigan studios of WKTV, let's go inside for Silent Voices.
Okay, we were just discussing who would be dealing with this, what committees we're talking about. We had testimony I'm on a committee called Children, Families, and Seniors, and obviously this falls into that policy committee. D.H.S is the chairman of the appropriations for D.H.S, which governs all of these areas. And we had the D.H.S director come, and Dave shared that he had a friend that had taken his child out of a restaurant to give him a spanking because he was throwing food in the restaurant. And he was called by Child Protective Services. Child Protective Services, accused them of abuse. He had his child taken away, luckily for just a couple of days, and was able to get his child back. And Dave asked the question of that director, is corporal punishment, is spanking my child a sign of abuse? And the director said, probably. And he said, well, what determines that? And he said, if you leave a mark, or if you leave a bruise, or anything on the child. Well, I can say this. My mom raised 4 boys, my mom and dad. And I caught some pretty good spankings in my day and deserved every one of them. And my mom broke the blood vessels in her hand on the back of my jeans and my brother's jeans. And I was not abused. I love my mom to this day. She was raised in an orphanage. And I think one of the problems that we have in this state and this country is we've lost the family as a central unit of our society. And we've taken that family away. We've expanded programs in our government to the point where probably very little is known about what they're doing. And it needs to be known. You mentioned the decreasing budget. Maybe you have a situation where you start at 0 and then prove why your program is needed and what's happening. I think that an opportunity for committee hearings on some of you people sharing your stories and how those stories have shown that that particular agency is out of control, I think would definitely be a good start. Definitely not the final answer. And obviously, we've got to hear from all sides of the story. I don't listen to just your testimony. It's only fair to listen to all testimony and make sure that all the facts are out in front before that happens. But just in my own personal knowledge of a good friend who's a pastor, who had a daughter that went to school and told one of her teachers that her brother was going to kill her when she got home because she had done something to his room. And the friend told the teacher told CPS, CPS took her away. And my friend fortunately had enough self-discipline and control not to scream at the woman that came to his house and said, we're not giving your child back until we can know she's safe. And he was furious, as any parent would be. You've taken my child, you've taken testimony from my child and never even informed me as a parent. Your parent is the person that is first in that child's life and should be first. So for me, I think our government's supposed to be there to assist families, not to get in their way or to disrupt them. So I would love to see some movement forward in that area, and definitely would be willing to have some of you folk that I've heard tonight be able to give testimony. When you do that, make sure that you are very careful. I know sometimes you want to name individuals because they've been against you, but all that's going to do is get you in trouble legally, and you don't want to do that. So be very careful in those areas, but definitely keep the proof that you have. Make sure that you have that, because these things need to be vetted and properly brought before the committees that have control over those agencies. Our government is out of control in many areas.
I don't disagree with the fact that I think money drives a lot of this stuff. I can see that happening. I do want to point out that our candidate mentioned earlier, this didn't happen overnight. And as a society, we brought this on ourselves. Because, and I shared the story on the floor and with my colleagues, but I'm going to share it with you, just so you have an idea how far we've come as a society. When I was 2 years old, my mother was a widow. I had one older brother and she was pregnant. I had to have glasses. Couldn't afford it. She didn't have a trade, she couldn't work. She was 19 years old. She went to get welfare. She was declined. She was declined welfare. You know why? Because she was a member of a church. So my mother went to the church. They bought me a pair of glasses. 2 weeks later, I lost them. Now that would trigger child abuse. Today, I'm serious. That's where we've come. My neighborhood, because my mother didn't dare go back to the church, my neighborhood got together and bought me another pair of glasses. My point to that story is, we used to be a society that looked out and cared for each other. You came from Africa. It's a shame that your neighborhood isn't there to help you with your children. They were for my mother. Mm-hmm. My mother couldn't have done it. She was right where you are. She couldn't have done it if it wasn't for my neighbors. I owe them a lot. We weren't rich. We're very poor. But what we've given to the government is our life. And every time a politician promises you a free government gift, there's a cost. Mm-hmm. And it's called liberty. Every time you take a nickel from the government, whether it be federal or state, you've sold your soul to that government. And this is where we've gotten to. And it isn't because they're taking our money now they're taking our kids. And the only way to stop that, we can start on legislation to tighten the laws up. But we got to stop leaning on government and start helping each other and build a culture that can self-sustain itself without the government.
Amen.
Well, boy, I wish I'd gone before Ken, because he said it well, and he said a lot of what I was going to say. I truly believe what was said here, and I think the four of us are pretty much of the same mindset. Of the role of government has expanded so fast and been so intrusive. I always wonder. I think it's a chicken and egg argument. Did government fill a hole that the churches quit serving us, or did the churches quit because government started in the social service business? I don't know which one's right, but I think 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was the role of our neighbors and of our churches to take care of its fellow man. And it's a shame today that churches have to be urged and coached and do a good job, but not the job that we probably did as neighbors 50 years ago. One statistic that I heard in my own church a few weeks ago, we have somewhere around 4,400 kids in Michigan in the foster care system. We have 10,000 churches. That's a solvable problem. That's less than one child for every 2 churches. We can do this without the government if we'd all just say it's our responsibility. It's my responsibility. It's Joe's responsibility. And we don't do that enough. So Tom is probably in the best position of the four of us here on the Wright committee. I would encourage you to bring this to Lansing. I would be happy to help. Ken made a suggestion. Perhaps the Judiciary Committee is another avenue. What amazes me from your testimony is the fact, the one common theme that I heard is kind of the rule of law is gone. That there's the lack of evidence to basically convict you is pretty scary. And I think that has to be said. I agree with Tom, though. I think this is a little scary for him because we're hearing one side. And I think we need to have both sides at the table to hear the other side of it as well. But I would be happy to assist if I can.
Are you aware there was a committee a couple months ago, a meeting held? D.H.S, the director herself, was invited, dealing with this particular issue. No one from D.H.S was there to be able to respond to the people who were supposed to challenge D.H.S on their complaints. Nobody from D.H.S could respond. State Representative Ajma gave it to somebody from D.H.S who was only there for finance, solely for finance, and gave it to this female individual and said, I want to get a response. To this day, after calling Mr. Ajma's office, they still have not received a response. I myself have called. Ajma's office and the committee hands are particularly tied at this time because all they can do is what? Appropriate funds. But yet, as you see, we're only a few compared to millions or thousands within the state that's going through the process of alienation from our children and division of a family. So what do you do when you do have your local government? We, the people, voted them in, but guess what? We're stuck for whatever amount of term to vote the right person in and pray to God and hope that person does their job. But what we're finding is once they're in office, people who do have the powers are not implementing or exercising their powers to stop and implement a change. So my question to this panel, where do we start? Because we already started destroying lives by voting people in. We put them in a position. We hope for a change. With each election, we hope for a change. When does it really start? Can we get an answer?
It starts this year. Yeah, the question was made, how do you start to take finances away from the government? Let me tell you, it's a costly thing. We've done that already in this legislature. We've cut budgets on government big time, just because we didn't have the money to support them anymore. And many of us have been getting death threats, hate mails, recalls. It's not pretty. It's not pretty, but we're doing it because it's what Michigan deserves. And we're not done. We're going to move forward. Government has to be reined in. I met with a business owner today. Same type of scenario that I heard from you, only it's what they're doing to his business, and they're choking the life out of him. That's why our jobs are gone, folks. It's the same scenario with every public, private, or private entity that's out there.
And when we call and we can't get answers for a month or two, that's something, because we're supposed to be the government. And we can't even get answers from our own departments that are under, the governor's direction. So it's time to shake them up. I know he's put some new directors in, and I think we've already seen some good movement in some of those areas.
It's a beautiful thing, having new directors, but what's sad is when you have a new director in, and that director is not aware of same people are in place that was corrupting the system before. You spoke earlier as far as contacting the Judicial Committee. How many people here have contacted the Judicial Committee? Okay, and no results. Please, go ahead.